to grow, it requires strong leadership and people who are committed to that cause and that vision, and that's exactly what we did over the weekend.
Do you see yourself as a king?
No, I've never proclaimed myself as a king. It's difficult enough being a bishop, let alone a king, I mean, honestly. And yet you'll find that some of these, I mean, you've got to understand, Mark, some of these men or these families, and many of them, thousands of them, have come from situations in light of the rising crime, domestic violence, the child abuse and murder that we're seeing now, and the drug and alcohol abuse. Yeah, you would think this is a breath of good news, you know, positively. Over 700 men who represent families who've taken a covenant to be better husbands to their wives, better fathers to their children, and better men all around. Well, what's the ruckus?
If you walked away for whatever reason, if you decided tonight to walk away from Destiny, would Destiny continue?
Yes, it would. And that's the very reason why when you see these men with their families make this type of pledge and covenant, that adds longevity, because we're next generation minded. I'm thinking of my children, to whom 3 are married now, and my 9 grandchildren. I'm thinking of their future, and I know that one day I will pass on and leave a legacy, and I want to make sure, and we all want to ensure, that we have something, we pass on something that's got they're going to have a good start, they're going to be able to carry on a legacy that is strong, and that means that there has to be some people who are willing right now to bury the hatchet and say, look, we're going to live decent lives and we want our children to have a far better life than perhaps we did in our start.
Mark Varankovic, I mean, you've been a critic of Destiny. I mean, you listen here to Brian Tamaki. They're saying, look, we're doing good stuff. What is the problem? It is no different from any other business that has a hierarchy and a set of protocols.
Well, we deal with cults all the time, and within this document here, we see codified the very mechanisms by which cults go askew. For example, Heaven's Gate Applewhite had people subjugated to him, and what happened was, as the leader goes strange, if he's the only point of reference, then all the people go strange. So, for example, Applewhite came to the idea that perhaps it was a good idea to commit suicide, to go to a comet, a spaceship behind a comet, and because he was the only point of reference that all his people looked up to, they also committed suicide. So the pattern is the risk. It's also it's the isolation. It is the fact that Brian claims, or at least seems to claim, to be the mouthpiece of God, even though we know that's not true because his prophecy has failed. But most of all, I think it is that pattern. But also one thing that is important to realise is that Destiny Church, and we need context here, Destiny Church is not a Christian church following Jesus Christ. It is a church following a man by the name of Brian Tamaki who claims to be the mouthpiece of God. And frankly, I mean...
Are you saying they're not Christians?
No, I'm saying what's happened, and I'm not talking about the people, I'm talking about the organisation and how their culture and everything. And Brian I've seen diagrams in their teachings and documents and so on where Brian's at the top, God speaks to Brian, Brian speaks to everyone else. It's because they believe in a erroneous doctrine.
But is that any different for Catholics saying the Pope is the conduit to God?
Sure, put it back 300-400 years and we're starting to get how it is now. The Catholics are very different now.
But do you believe Brian Tamaki is a dangerous man?
Personally, I've met him a couple of times and he seems fine. However, what I'm saying is that this need that he has for adoration, you know, I mean, all these guys with their earphones and that sort of thing, it's not about security. It's about making Brian look big, like the big man. And his need to actually be adored. And the people adore him in Destiny. If you talk to someone in Destiny, in fact, the man went along to one of his services, Jesus Christ was mentioned twice, Brian Tamaki was mentioned 102 times. The focus, and here is an important point. Christians in New Zealand are sick of being identified with this man. All due respect, Brian, they're sick of being identified with him. And it is a case of when Brian speaks, it's not God speaking, it's not Christian speaking, it's Brian Tamaki speaking from his own head.
Is that what it is? Is it all about Brian?
No, I didn't hear anything you said, actually. Because you know why, Mark? Because if we are a cult, then the Catholics, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Baptists and the Pentecostals are all cults as well, because we believe, we have the same actual orthodox tenets of belief. Where I believe that where the difficulty is, and where people find this, is that I believe that we are a church that wants to make a difference in people's lives. You know, people talk about it, I see columnists make, and there's plenty of knockers out there, they constantly say we're doing this and that, and often we see in the context of it, it isn't accurate. While they're talking about it, Mark, I'm doing it. And we're seeing thousands of lives changed, people who were probably, you could say, were society's worst nightmares last year or a month ago. Today, here they are wanting to make a decent go of being family people.
But you know that's the image in some ways.
That's right.
Is what disturbs some people. They see even in the uniforms.
You know, Mark, that's the price. Well, they're dressing well. Here's people that didn't think much of themselves. They never had a self-image or felt worthy. And now that's been inspired in them. That's been lifted. They've been encouraged to feel that they're somebody, they're a part of something. Gee, if we take this away and if we start to belittle something now that's making some headway, good grief, what type of country are we?
Mark, isn't it another church just acting in a different way from the mainstream?
Churches can act in different ways from the mainstream if they want, but of course, being a church, claiming to be a church, following Jesus Christ, there are certain things from the Christian perspective they ought to do, i.e., the Bible is very clear that a man is not to lord it over people. Christians do not lord it over people. Yet here we have Tamaki.
Right.
We read that document and we're meant to be subjugated to him. We're meant to...
No, they don't. They know who they worship, Mark. They know they worship Jesus Christ. They respect and honour what we have done in their lives. And I think that is really healthy. And Hannah and I, as a family with my grandchildren, we know how important it is for people to have something that they can see here. God's invisible. He needs a visible representation, something to help them.
The tangible expression of God, which is
That's right,
Brian.
Mark. And, you know, what people need is to see something. And, you know, if that's happening, and if the fruit is there, a bad tree can't produce good fruit. Only a good tree can produce good fruit. The fruit is there. You might not like our procedures, you might not like my style and my way,
right,
but it's reaching people, it's helping people, particularly in our most vulnerable parts of this city and this country.
OK, look, I'm sorry we have run out of time. Thank you both for joining us, and thank you too, Mark.